Welcome, everybody. We're going to get started now. My name is Matt Gordon. I am one of the co-executive directors with Rogue Farm Corps. Welcome to our host farm information session. We're glad that you're able to join us for a little bit this evening. Happy fall, happy October. And we're going to try to run through some basic information on what it looks like to host an apprentice with our apprenticeship program, and then hear from some current host farmers, and then run right into questions from you all. If you have questions throughout, please drop them in the chat, and then at the end we'll have open Q&A, and we'll enable video and audio at that point for participants. And with that being said, I should remind you, we are recording tonight, so this will be available publicly afterwards, and we'll try to have an audio file available as well. Again, my name is Matt Gordon. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the co-executive director with Rogue Farm Corps. My work is focused on our programs and operations, and in a previous life, I was a farmer. I had a small vegetable operation in Northeast Portland. And I've been working with Rogue Farm Corps in various capacities since 2014, and just recently became the co-executive director. And so I'm passionate about local food, about farming, about training people into farming, and yeah, happy to tell you a little bit about one of the ways that we do that here tonight. And with me tonight, we have our farmer training program manager, Kate Crowley. And we have three awesome host farmers who have been hosting with us this year, and Kate will introduce them later after I run through kind of the program basics. So without further ado, I'm going to dive right into that presentation, Kate, unless there's anything else you want to add at the beginning.
That sounds good. I think we can get started.
Okay. So, little intro to Rogue Farm Corps. Our mission is to train and equip the next generation of farmers and ranchers through hands-on educational programming. Our vision includes a world in which land is deeply cared for, power is equitably shared, and farms, ranches, and the people who work them flourish. Our values include stewardship, so protecting farmland and promoting agricultural practices that restore water, soil, and biodiversity. Mentorship, sharing knowledge and experience across generations through hands-on experiential education and learning. Collaboration, so joining forces with partners and allies to advance shared goals and act together for a livable future. And systemic change, so addressing disparities in the food system to achieve equitable access to education, training, land, and capital, and building diverse, adaptable communities able to thrive in a changing climate. So if these missions and values speak to you, then being a host farm might be a good fit for you. Okay, our apprenticeship program. What it does is we connect aspiring farmers or farm curious folks who have usually between 0 and 2 years of previous farming experience with established farms or host farms for season-long apprenticeship positions. And this helps fill labor needs on those host farms. It also gives those aspiring farmers the desired skills and experiences that they're looking for. And then some of the outcomes of this include more trained farm workers and future farm owner operators. And let me give Zoe the right privileges here. Okay, great. The two big parts of the apprenticeship program include the on-farm training hours, so the hours that the apprentice spends at the host farm working, being trained by the host farm and mentored by the host farmer. And then the Beginning Farmer Educational Event Series that Rogue Farm Corps runs to augment that on-farm experience that the apprentice is getting. So what does it mean to be a host farm? Basically, very simply, it means you're a good employer and mentor and supervisor. So you employ, train, and supervise apprentices, a apprentice, or you can have up to 4 at a time at your operation. Pay them an hourly wage because they're an employee of yours. Generally, being a good employer and supervisor and mentor, and we try not to make this too onerous what we mean by all of this, and we think that people who are good supervisors and mentors are generally going to be good host farmers with us. Some of the things that means to us includes providing feedback through check-ins and evaluation sessions, providing context to the apprentices, so explaining why you're doing something a certain way and not just how to do it, providing an experience with a diversity of tasks and skills at the farm, answering their questions as well as you can when you have time, and being a resource to the apprentices, providing hands-on demonstrations and explanations, working alongside apprentices on a regular and consistent basis. And that does not mean all the time. It just means that there is some regularity and consistency to that throughout the season. And helping apprentices achieve more independence in their role over the course of their position. And then allowing time for the apprentices to attend the Rogue Farm Corps educational events. So what are some of the reasons that you might want to consider being a host farm? One of the biggest reasons that our host farmers tell us is that they get access to an applicant pool of really passionate and motivated candidates that they otherwise might not be able to connect with. Obviously, apprentices help complete farm tasks because they're employees on your farm, and so there is a labor element to this, of course. And we help provide training to host farmers on a number of topics, including human resources, farm crew management, mentorship, communication, and equity. We provide some logistical and administrative support. So for example, if you've never employed somebody before, we can help you go through some of the things you'll need to do in order to become an employer. You can connect with other host farmers to share your experiences and compare notes, be that on mentoring or production or whatever it might be that you want to connect around. We provide ongoings and check-ins and resources from our staff to you as a host farmer. And then if you want to go to any of the educational events that we're running for apprentices, you're more than welcome to. And then if you're looking to train folks into potential management positions at your operation, I think this is a nice way to do that because it's a very structured program and it helps provide that structure that could potentially help advance somebody at your operation into those kind of positions. And if you have an existing employee that you think might want to do this kind of program, that's totally possible as well. So it could help increase skills and knowledge of your existing employees as well. You don't have to have somebody come from our new applicant pool. So who is eligible to be a host farm? Any Oregon farm, ranch, or business that's in commercial production. So have to be in Oregon, have to be in commercial production. And that just means that you are distributing or selling farm products to your local or regional economy. You have to have at least 5 years of production experience or otherwise demonstrate to us that you have the ability to mentor beginning farmers. So we do have a little bit of flexibility on that 5 years mark, but generally that's what we're looking for. If you're looking to host maybe just a 3-month position or something shorter, then we'll be a little bit more flexible on that. That you're committed to mentoring and training aspiring farmers and committed to upholding the values of the program, which include equity, safety, open communication, and responsibility. It is not required to provide housing or offer housing to apprentices, although that is definitely an option. And it used to be, so that's one of the things we're trying to get out there in the world is that with a host farm situation at Rogue Farm Corps, housing is not required to be offered. Some of the traits and techniques that host farms exemplify, production practices that work with nature, limit pollution and waste, and avoid toxic chemicals, humane livestock practices that enhance soil biology, air and water quality, and wildlife habitat, diversity and resilience being represented on the farm through a variety of plant or animal genetics, farm products, and the ecosystem itself at the farm. And we're looking for host farms that prioritize soil health and climate resilience strategies. Some of the requirements of the host farms that we ask you to do, create an on-farm curriculum. And this is something we have a template for and we help you out with. It is basically a list of skills that you're saying you'll provide experience for that apprentice at your farm during the season. A farm apprentice agreement, which is basically a written employment agreement. Again, we have a template for this and can help you write it. If you are offering housing, a housing agreement. And again, we have a template for that and can help you with that as well as necessary. If you are offering housing, we want it to be safe and secure, and there are already OSHA housing requirements. So we just ask that you abide by those. It doesn't mean you have to be inspected by OSHA. It just means that the housing needs to meet those requirements. I've just dropped a link in the chat to what I believe is where you find out what those are. We ask that you review and interview apprenticeship applicants, unless you already have an employee who wants to do the apprenticeship program, in which case they would just apply through us and we would get their application and they would be in with you. Abide by employment law, including having workers' compensation insurance, abide by safety laws and regulations, obviously supervise and train apprentices. We ask that these positions offer at least 500 on-farm hours, employment hours to each apprentice. We ask that host farmers hold regular crew meetings. And yes, the question that came just in the chat just now, do host farms get the opportunity to interview apprentices? Yes, so you interview apprentices, check their references, you decide who to make an offer to. Definitely, it's up to the host farm. We ask that host farmers turn in monthly apprenticeship timesheets to Rogue Farm Corps. And on those timesheets, what we're looking for is just that over the course of the season, we ask that apprentices' average hours are not over 40 hours a week, and that in any given week, they're not over 50. Additional requirements, we have winter trainings about 6 hours between January and March, and this is generally virtual, all of these trainings and meetings. Kickoff meeting in March for 1.5 hours about. November season debrief meeting, another 1.5 or 2 hours. An annual written survey. Each winter, we have you update the materials such as the website description, the on-farm curriculum, and the apprenticeship agreement. Usually they're just small tweaks. The first year, the first winter after you're accepted, it's a bigger lift because you're creating all these from scratch, not from scratch, but with our templates. And then the following years, usually it's just a kind of a quick update and edit on these things. If there are any issues that arise with an apprentice, we ask that you deal with them directly, honestly, openly. We're there to provide support around if we can help at all. Support you, support the apprentice, but we don't get in between you and the apprentice dealing with your issues directly. We ask that you communicate in a timely fashion with Rogue Farm Corps staff. Okay, so what does Rogue Farm Corps provide to host farmers? We promote and do outreach and recruitment for the open apprenticeship positions. Generally, those positions open, our application opens in January, and then we start forwarding applications to you as they come in, and it's rolling applications. And then as positions fill, we'll still keep taking applications until positions are full or positions have decided, like, I'm not going to fill it this year. We provide guidance and support in the hiring process. We provide templates for different documents, as I mentioned before, trainings, check-ins and support as needed during the season. So at a minimum, we do beginning, middle, and end check-ins. And these are just informal check-ins. You'll have a staff point person and check-ins and reminders about good mentorship practices, things like that. And then if there are any issues coming up, we help you troubleshoot them, talk through those with you. And then obviously the opportunity to help train the next generation of farmers, which I'm sure we can all get on board with. So a little bit about chapters and events. So a chapter is, well, we work with host farms across the state of Oregon, but we have staff in just a few locations. and we call those chapters. So in currently, we have a Portland chapter where we have a cluster of host farms, and a Rogue Valley where we have a cluster of host farms. And things look a little bit different if you're in a chapter versus out of a chapter, but not that different. So Portland and Rogue Valley, those are the current the chapter locations. If apprentices are at host farms in these chapters, they'll have a hybrid in-person and virtual event series. Apprentices outside of chapters are 1.25 hours driving distance from a chapter center, so Portland or Central Point. And the apprentices at these host farms will have a mostly online event series with a few in-person weekend intensives of farm tours, discussions, and camping. And all host farms have a RFC point person to support them, whether that's a chapter coordinator or Kate as the farmer training program manager. And the event schedule that I mentioned for apprentices generally runs April through October. There are 2 to 4 events per month at regular times, other than those weekend intensives, of which there will be 2 to 4 scattered throughout the season. We're still figuring out exactly how many of those there will be next year. And then there's opportunities to lead educational events. We love doing farm tours. And so if we ask you to help lead a tour or educational session for apprentices, if you want to do that, that's definitely an option. And we do pay for the teaching time. Other important details, the position lengths are flexible. So we want to make it work for your farm and your production schedule. Start and end dates are flexible. We typically see between 5 and 10 month position lengths, and starting between March and May and ending between October and December. Again, providing each position with at least 500 hours of on-farm training. Can be full-time or part-time positions. There is an annual host farm fee. We're moving to a sliding scale annual fee of between $50 and $200. And fee waivers are available for host farms with owner-operators that identify as Black, Indigenous, or another person of color. And other fee waivers you can request, and we'll evaluate on a case-by-case basis. There is an apprenticeship fee for apprentices. In 2023, it was between $475 and $775, depending on whether they were in a chapter or out of a chapter. We do have scholarships for those, so that the financial aspect of the program hopefully won't be a barrier to most folks. We do prioritize BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, veterans, and low-income folks for those scholarships. But in practice, we've had enough scholarships to cover pretty much all the requests from apprentices. I have a question about what percentage of apprentices complete the full season they agreed upon at the beginning of the season. And it varies year to year. We have a good track record, I would say. In general, my rough guess is, I mean, the vast majority of them complete it. We have maybe any given season 1 to 3 folks who don't. We had 18 host farms at the beginning of the season with about 21, 23 positions, somewhere about that. We're ending the season with 18 apprentices, I believe, something like that this year. So I think, actually, correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, but I think actually we had, what, 20 placed, and we're ending with, no, I'm getting the numbers mixed up because I haven't looked at the roster recently, but I think we have 3 or so that are not finishing what they initially set out to do this year. And that is maybe a little bit higher than normal. So yeah, pretty low. How do you apply to be a host farm? So first of all, you go to our website, fill out this little quick form, which I'll show you in a minute, to receive our full information packet, and it includes the application. Want to apply by November 15th. And then when you're applying, you want to write for a public audience, because what we do with a lot of the application content that you write, if you're accepted, that becomes the farm description on our website. So we don't ask you to write a separate description for the website. We just take what you told us, put it into the form for the website, and get a few pictures from you. It asks you to include some references in your application. So include those, and then we will arrange an interview, an on-farm site visit, and check references. And then we hope, we can get all that done and make decisions by December 15th so that we can have all the new host farms up on the website in early January when we open up our apprenticeship applications. And I would like to show you real quick where on our website you go to download that form, and then I'll be done and turned over to you, Kate. And keep those questions coming in the chat. And I'm going to, let's see, go over here, share this screen. Our website is roguefarmcorps.org. And if you put /host, you'll get to our host farm information page. And right up top there, it says, please fill out this form to receive our information packet about host farms. So I'm going to click that link, and you just enter your name, your email. You can put your phone, your business and farm name, city, county, state, and zip. You can subscribe to the general RFC email list if you want. I'm just going to bypass that to be quick. It says, thank you. Here's a Google Doc and a PDF. Look for an email from Kate Crowley. Okay, I'm going into my email. I'm going to look for that email from Kate. There it is, Kate Crowley, prospective host farm information packet. Thank you for your interest. Here's a link to our packet. Okay, so this is the Google Doc. And there's also a PDF version of this. This is our full information packet. So all the details are in here. And at the end, you'll see host farm application. And these are links in the document. So you should be able to click on that and go all the way down to the application. And this is towards the end of the packet. And if you want to fill this out online, you just click this link to the Google Doc of this application. It'll take you over to just the application. And you want to make a copy of this so you can edit it. Otherwise, you'll just be able to view it. So you make a copy, name it something about your farm application. And then you can start filling it out. So you'll be able to go down here and write your farm name, website, etc. And all these ones that have an asterisk next to them, they are the things that are going to go on the website. So make sure that, especially when you're filling out these longer answer questions, like 2 with an asterisk here, that you're writing in a way that you'd want it to appear publicly on our website. So that's all I wanted to show you about that. Oh, and when you are done, you're going to email it to training@roguefarmcorps.org or mail it to our address here, which is on the front of that application. So I'm going to go back to this screen share. And yeah, apprenticeship applications open in early January. And I'm going to turn it over to Kate, I believe now, right?
Yes, and I am going to shortly be turning this stage over to one of our host farm panelists. We have 3 host farms represented tonight from different corners of the state. We have 2 distanced host farms on the call with us and 1 host farm from one of our chapters, from our Portland chapter. They represent fairly different farming operations. And we've got some new host farmers here tonight to talk about their experiences with the program and a little bit about their farms. So first we have Zoe Bradbury, who is at Valley Flora in Langley on the Southern Oregon coast. And Zoe, if you'd like to unmute yourself now, tell us a little bit about your farm, how many years you've been a Rogue Farm Corps host farm, and let's hear something about what drew you to our program and what your experience has been like.
Sure. Thanks, Kate. Thank you, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Zoe, and we are located down in Langlois. It's a very rural pocket of the Southern Oregon coast, about 70 miles north of the border. Our farm is called Valley Flora. It's a kind of unique ownership structure. My mom and my sister and I actually all operate the business, and we all run our own businesses on the same piece of land, and then we market collectively under the Valley Flora umbrella. So each of us has sort of a different production scheme. My sister mostly does salad mix. My mom mostly does hot house production of tomatoes, peppers, basil, kind of peak of summer, solanums and whatnot. And then myself and my crew do pretty much the rest of the produce lineup, and we go year round. So what I do as part of Valley Flora is represents about 75% of the business. So we're highly diversified fresh market produce, also berries, herbs, flowers, orchard fruit. There's about 6 acres in annual and perennial production, plus another couple of acres in orchard production. The property altogether is about 90 acres. 40 of that is upland timber, and then there's another 40 in pasture that supports a herd of sheep and my draft horses. There's been production on the property, well, since I was born there, and we always had a big garden, but since 1998, there's been commercial production. So it's been 25 years. Since 2008, that was really the beginning of Valley Flora. So it's been a 15-year stint with lots of growth. I think at this point kind of plateaued at the scale we want to be and the crop mix that we want to produce. We really were intentional about scaling the farm to supply our local community and not have to drive very far. Because all of us would rather spend our time on the farm and maybe at the swimming hole than up and down Highway 101 delivering produce. So that 6-acre footprint is pretty much just right for supplying produce as far south as Brookings, pretty much at the border, and as far north as Coos Bay, which is about 45 minutes north of us, and a couple of the small towns in between. So we have 4 primary sales channels. We have a farm stand and U-Pick operation. We have direct sales to stores and restaurants, caterers. We have 125 family CSA, about 125 in the summer season, which is June through December, and then about half that in the winter, which runs January to May. So we do go year round. We also supply 4 different food banks up and down the coast on a weekly basis. So the food is out there in lots of ways, and year round. To do all of that, we rely on a 4 to 5 person crew plus myself, and then my mom and my sister are running their own operations mostly without labor. So they're scaled much smaller. We also have a couple of draft horses working in harness. I consider them part of the crew. So they do an enormous amount of work for us and save the humans a lot of effort. And we also, I should say, we're mixed power. So we do have a diesel tractor, and then all manner of other hand tools. So we run the gamut. The farm is not certified organic, but we farm as if we were. So everything that we do would comply if we were to go that route and get third-party certification. We've made an intentional choice not to, primarily because our market is so hyper local, that certification can be a proxy for trust. If we were trying to sell stuff into a Portland market or somewhere far flung where people didn't know us, we probably would want to do it. But given that we know a lot of our customers and have for all these years, we haven't gone that route. So as far as RFC goes, this was our first year as a host farm. We are considered one of the satellite or distance farms. I think we're at least 2.5 hours from the Rogue, well, more like 3.5 hours from the Rogue Valley hub and 5 hours from Portland. That geography is one of the things we love about where we are, but has also made it challenging to find help on the farm. There isn't a very big labor pool here. So after many years of ad hoc hiring and maybe just working too hard because we were shorthanded and all the scenarios, we plugged in with RFC, and our experience has been fantastic. I just want to say that loud and clear. first of all, the applicant pool that they gave us access to was very strong. We had so many choices, which was a first for us. Typically, we're sort of like, oh, you just showed up and said you wanted a job. Okay. But this was it allowed us to have a very intentional process of interviewing people, doing second interviews of people, going through all these applications, and really as a team with my returning crew, making some informed choices. And it really, really panned out. So we offered 2 applicant or apprentice positions on the farm, and we filled both of them. We hired 2 women who have been absolutely awesome. Both of them deeply invested, deeply interested in farming, one with a little bit of experience, the other with none. But both of them have just proven to be such an asset to the farm. They've taken on an enormous amount of responsibility. We kind of saddled them with a few different roles and made a real effort to try to give them as wide an exposure to everything that we do on the farm as possible in the spirit of the educational aspect of RFC. But because we're a small crew and a very diverse farm with a lot of sales channels, it means that you get to kind of dip your toes into a lot of everything throughout a season. So we made it a real point to make sure that they got to dip their toes and are continuing to do. So, and I think that has just paid real dividends because they're both really committed and I think feel a sense of ownership at Valley Flora that is fun to behold. And maybe I don't know, Rogue Farm Car might be too effective because it's looking like they both are going to stay. So that might mean that we're not a host farm next year if they do decide to stay, because we probably wouldn't need to hire beyond our existing crew. But I feel like that's real testament to what RFC is doing. Not only are they providing all of this training and education to just expand everyone's minds and provide this fantastic lens through which people are learning about agriculture. I mean, not everyone gets their first exposure to farming and agriculture through the lens that RFC provides, which is that of equity and justice and some of the ugly parts of the ag history that has transpired in Oregon and in the country. Politics and production, like they really do. You guys do an amazing job of exposing these folks to all of that. And that just really helps support everything they're learning in the practical realm on the farm. I think it makes it go deeper. It makes it more interesting and it gives it context. So there's just a much, I think, much stronger connection and investment in what they're doing with us. And that's different than the hiring I've done in the past. So as a business owner, RFC has been a huge asset to me. I mean, I wish that I had become a host farm 15 years ago when I started hiring people, because they really have provided a ton of support. They've provided me a nudge to finally finish the employee handbook, to things that are required to be a host farm, things that I've wanted to do, but maybe backburnered or only done half-assed. And this has been this great opportunity to make all of that a lot more solid and grown up. So I feel proud of that. I'm glad the farm needed to grow in those ways, and RFC has provided this great structure and support to do so. Let's see. I think that's probably the gist of it. The only other kind of maybe unique thing for us is that we have access to a program through our Small Business Development Center where we can actually enroll new hires into an on-the-job training program, which is a cost share. So for the first 12 weeks of them working for me, this program pays half of their wage. And so we were able to coordinate with RFC and small business and get both of our new folks in that program, which is even, an extra bonus in terms of affording the first 3 months of anyone on a highly diversified farm where you're doing something different almost every week. There's just a huge, huge learning curve. And it's nice to feel like there's RFC there supporting that process. And there's also, for us, this other local program that helps financially. So I would say 5 stars all around. I'm totally happy to answer any questions if anyone wants to reach out to me directly by email. And I'm sure I'm out of time, so I'll pass the baton, Kate.
Thanks, Zoe. I appreciate all that so much. And I'll also say I really enjoyed getting to know both of your apprentices as their RFC point person this season. They've asked some really wonderful questions at our online events and have been very engaged at the weekend intensives. I've especially enjoyed watching one of their progress for their independent project, growing their trial wheat crop. That's been really fun to see. Thank
Yes.
you. Next, we are going to hear from Lucy and Matt Day of Harbinger Farm, which is another one of our new Rogue Farm Corps host farms this season. Harbinger is in Myrtle Creek in the Umpqua Valley, and they have had one apprentice this season. Matt and Lucy, if you would like to unmute yourselves.
Thanks, Kate.
Howdy, I'm Matt.
I'm Lucy.
And yeah, as you said, Kate, we're located outside of Myrtle Creek. We're 10 miles from the town of Myrtle Creek on a tributary of the South Umpqua River. A pretty picturesque little valley here. We produce mixed vegetables, a little bit of berries, and we have a small young orchard that we're working on growing more and more every year. So the focus of our business is vegetables, though, is annual vegetables for sure. We grow about 2 acres of vegetables. We do steward about 12 acres of land, and then about an acre here at our host farm of vegetables, and then roughly an acre down the road at a lease field. We have been in production since the we've been marketing since the fall of 2020. We came here with lots of previous experience working for other people, and we really hit the ground running here in 2020 and then started marketing that fall. So yeah, that's kind of when it started in earnest. Primary sales outlets are largely direct market sales, 2 farmers markets a week, one of which is year round. The other runs May to October. So that's kind of the bread and butter. We do have a small CSA, and we do a little bit of restaurant sales. It's not a massive part of our business, but we do a little bit. Our crew is tiny. We're a small farm. It's just Lucy and I and our RFC apprentice, Lisa. So small crew, but we get a lot of stuff done. We grow a lot of food. And production methods are just like Zoe said. We are not certified because we're largely direct to consumer. And we can have a conversation with almost every single one of our customers, but we grow to using organic standards. We feel that we even go beyond some of them sometimes. So that's kind of the rundown of the farm and our production methods.
And this is our first year as an RFC host farm. And it is actually the first year that we're employing someone as well. So
big step.
We got to enjoy learning how to be employers, and RFC greatly assisted us in that. All of the trainings that we went through prior to the start of the season were incredibly valuable. So we're very grateful that you didn't leave us floundering in that venture. And we actually learned about the apprenticeship program from our friend and neighbor who was a former RFC staff member, Bobby. She approached us at the farmers market last year, told us all about the program, asked if we were interested in being a host farm, and we made it into the pool by the skin of our teeth, a little bit belatedly this year, but we're super glad that we did. It has been an awesome experience for us, and hopefully for our dear apprentice as well. We were matched with someone who really meshed well with our systems and our personalities. And I think RFC did a really great job pre-screening both the farms and the apprentices. And we actually didn't interview any others. We went with our first person that we decided to interview because it was such a perfect.
It was a good fit.
It was a great fit.
Really good fit.
Yep. And again, we have benefited from the trainings, and we have felt that RFC is there for us through every step of the season. And we're super excited to be able to mentor a person who wants to be part of the food system and collaborate with other farms and network and meet new people and feel like we've grown our community in a really meaningful way.
Thanks, y'all.
Yeah, I guess that's it.
That's wonderful. And I want to draw out something that you mentioned there, just talking about the hiring process. We'd had a question in the chat earlier about whether host farms are able to interview or choose their apprentices, and the answer is yes. Rogue Farm Corps will present host farms for the 2024 season with a applicant pool. As has been mentioned, we do rank those applicants with some metrics that are generally useful for our host farmers, but folks are encouraged to look through all of the applications themselves and get in contact with folks who they're interested in interviewing. And that process is something that we provide some support for and resources, such as suggested questions to ask, the prompt that if at all possible, you schedule a time to meet in person and do a working interview. That might not be realistic in every situation. We do have folks apply from out of state. And we work with host farms all around the state. But we provide some support for that process, but really that final decision is between the host farm and the apprentice, if they want to work together and sign an agreement. Thanks. Okay, our third presenter is Alma Gaeta, who runs Peachwood Orchard, which is in the area known now as Hood River, Oregon. I will say that while I'm not the point person for Alma's Apprentice this season, I have had the pleasure of getting to know them at a couple of Portland events. Peachwood is one of our Portland chapter host farms, and I have been very grateful that Alma's Apprentice has on a number of occasions brought some really delicious organic peaches to RFC events. So thank you for that. Go ahead and unmute yourself, Alma.
Sweet, thank you. So yeah, my name is Alma Gaeta and I use she, her pronouns. This is our third season hosting through Rogue Farm Corps. So when we had our first intern, at that point they were called, Matt was very helpful throughout the process of screening through people and writing, having our application, writing out our curriculum. So I felt very supported through that process. So thank you. And I found out about Rogue Farm Corps through a friend who was working at the time at one of the chapters, as well as we had somebody who had done Rogue Farm Corps reach out to us, asking for experience working with perennials and pruning specifically. So she was interning at another farm and decided that she wanted to reach out. And so she told me about Rogue Farm Corps, which sounded amazing. And so then I decided to reach out. But I do, just within that little story, I feel like it does create a community and it creates a network of people that are doing, that are passionate about farming and that have gone through Rogue Farm Corps, or that know people that have gone through Rogue Farm course. So even through that person, I found another person I could hire for pruning. And so it kind of created this network of Rogue Farm Corps students that, you know, got connected even before I was officially a mentor. They were already coming to me. So I decided, you know, maybe this would be a good match. And just to say a little bit about what we do, we're an organic orchard out in Hood River. We have 2.5 acres, 267 peach trees, 25 different varieties of peaches. And we have a garden and we have pollinator habitat and all of that. So we are certified organic. And for us, that's important because we sell to kombucha places and breweries that ask us for our little certification and need that for their value-added products. And we are working on some value-added products on the farm as well. And we sell wholesale, we do farmers markets, we do direct to consumer. So we kind of try to keep it balanced and do a little bit of everything, stay connected with our community directly and be able to feel like I can directly hand somebody a peach, but also, you know, be able to move big quantities of fruit when we need to move big quantities of fruit that go to kombuchas or breweries or new seasons and things like that. So I'll just, you know, just to be brief, because I want to leave enough time for questions and just to like plant the seed of for asking questions. So the first year apprentice that we had was an amazing experience. And I've stayed in contact with that apprentice. He decided to stay on in Portland and got a job teaching high school students how to grow veggies. So he works with high school students, teaching them how to grow veggies. He learned how to do irrigation with us and set up our irrigation for our veggie plots, and ended up doing the irrigation for several of the high schools. They sent him, they're like, we can't fix this irrigation and nobody's been able to do anything about it. So they sent him out and he fixed the irrigation and called me. He was so proud and excited that he was able to do that. And just really satisfying to see that, you know, he's able to create a broader impact and just seeing like, okay, here I am doing my thing, but also learning about, you know, how the people that I have had taken the time to teach and really pause and like show them the big picture have been able to take these skills and like share them with different communities. This year, you know, this was 2 years ago that he interned with us. And so this year we collaborated and now he has interns at his high school program. So he brings his high school interns to the farm and we talk to them about what we do here. And I grew flowers for him so he could teach his students how to make bouquets, and you know, they had funding for that. And so it's been really sweet just staying connected and like being able to still maintain that network. I am fairly active within the network of Portland Black, Indigenous, and people of color farmers. So I really connected him within that network. That has been just really lovely to see him continuing those friendships and continuing to collaborate with some of those farmers as well. And yeah, I've had a great experience. It's been definitely having to put in some extra energy and extra time in a different way to have somebody who's there shadowing you and kind of following along and learning about the challenges, all the challenges, financial, emotional, work challenges, physical challenges of farming, and just being very candid with that person, but also guiding them through and like showing them different ways, and also networking them with other people that can have some tips around that. Last year we had 3 interns, 2 full-time and 1 part-time. And this year we went back to 1. I think next year we'll probably do 2 and kind of balance out in that area. We also have 4 part-time employees this season and 1 family member that ended up being like a full-time employee and moving in with us for a while just because we have so much work in the orchard. But yeah, my 3 interns that I had last season, I know the terminology has changed this year to apprenticeship, but it's virtually the same thing. There's tiny differences, but I've stayed in contact with them as well, and they've come out this season to eat peaches, or they call me for references or things like that. So it's really sweet staying, connected with the apprentices and the interns, and just keeping up with, how they're incorporating their passion for agriculture, for farming, and love of nature within their lives, and whatever they end up deciding to do, whether they end up engaging with agriculture now or deciding that it's maybe best for another time. Yeah, and this season, I'm very happy. I think one of the key elements is being pretty picky in the interview process and asking a lot of questions. For me, also being very candid and, saying this is a challenge that you're probably going to face this season. How do you imagine that you'll deal with this? Being in whatever, possibly being away from your community, how do you think that what you build around you to not feel like you're isolated or lonely, or, just things to get candidates really imagining themselves in the position that they're going to be in, rather than just the idealistic, like, I'm very enthusiastic about agriculture, but just the day-to-day things. And yeah, some of that comes with a little bit more of like experience and like observing things that come up. But yeah, I think just being very candid about that, and even asking things about finances, like, do you feel comfortable with the financial situation that we're offering? Does that make sense for you for this period of time that you're going to be working? And just being really clear and direct about things like that, I think is very important to just get it out, because, we have had applicants that I get along really well, and just either the finances aren't going to work, or the logistical being away from their families isn't going to work out. And it's better that they imagine that early on in this season, and they're able to make that decision rather than later once they're there or anything like that. But okay, I will leave some time for questions, but yep, thanks.
Thank you, Alma, for those closing insights. I think those are really important things to keep in mind during the hiring process. And we can have, and perhaps we will have, another info session for apprentices where we could go into detail specifically about the benefits to our program participants from that side. But I will just share that I, in addition to being the Rogue Farm Corps Farmer Training Program Manager, also am the owner operator of a pastured livestock production that I started the year after completing my Rogue Farm Corps Advanced Apprenticeship a number of years ago. And that experience was really important and powerful for me in terms of giving me the confidence to start my own farm project. It also allowed me to meet a number of other farmer peers who I'm still in close contact with today and are important parts of my farm network. So that resonates with me as well. Thanks for drawing that out, Alma. We do have some time left. We've got about 5 minutes for Q&A here. If anyone wants to type a question into the chat or raise your hand and ask a question of our panelists, now is a great time to do that.
And I'll just say too, I just gave everyone permission to turn on their cameras, turn on their microphones. So that is also an option. So if you have a question, you can type it in the chat, you can unmute yourself, or you can raise your hand.
And maybe while folks are thinking of their questions, I'm curious if anyone on the panel wants to share anything about the application process for farms who might be thinking of applying.
I have a quick question, and it's around becoming an employer. I feel like farmers tend to be pretty informal about some things. And so making a transition to becoming a formal employer feels like a daunting thing. Can you talk a little bit about some of the key components of becoming an official employer, like under the state or the federal government, and what kind of other costs, other than just paying the labor for the apprentice, come with that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think we could answer that as RFC staff, but I also would love to hear what Matt and Lucy have to say about their journey becoming an employer for the first time this year.
It has been, we found things out along the way. I'm not sure that we even know it all yet, but we decided to use our point of sale system as our payroll. Square offers payroll for small businesses. It doesn't make sense for large corporations, but being that we only have one employee, the cost per month for the software and it made sense because we were already using Square as our point of sale. And then we learned all about the taxes that we would be paying. The way that Square does it might be unique in that we directly pay our employees taxes. They aren't taken out of her check. They just come automatically from our bank account. So Square line items everything for you, so you're very aware of where each denomination of money is going per pay period. So that has been something that we definitely weren't aware of prior, but we're making sure that everything is above board and we're trying to follow all the rules, including filing with the state of Oregon. We have to do a quarterly payroll report with them as well, and they will let you know if you haven't done it. And luckily there is some forgiveness there if you are a new employer and you happen to miss reporting. So those are just a couple of things that we've come to learn along the way.
Yeah, we have some recommendations around getting workers' compensation insurance and getting set up with a payroll processor. I think those might be the two things off the top of my head that we have some recommendations from farmers around those things that we send out to folks who are interested, and happy to sort of like walk people through one-on-one too.
We have another question in the chat, which is, are there any panelists who would like to talk about any experience with language barriers between existing farm employees and potentially an apprentice?
I can speak to that a bit. I have a long-time employee who's been with me for 13 years, who is an immigrant from Mexico. He and I really have built the farm together, and he continues to be part of the crew. He's Spanish as his first language, and he has some English, but he and I have always spoken Spanish together. And when it was just the two of us, that was great, fine, easy. But as the crew has grown, it's generally been English speakers who have been joining the team. So there's been a combination of things happening. His English has been improving. Other people have been learning Spanish. And then I do a lot of translation and bilingual instruction giving. And so I might relay something to Roberto in Spanish and then turn to the rest of the crew and give it again in English, or vice versa. So it does create more challenges. There definitely can be things that don't make it through the communication channels as hoped. But I would say in general, it's a wonderful part of my experience on the farm. And I think that it is kind of an enhancement for everyone else who gets an opportunity to learn from a native Spanish speaker and a wonderful human being. So it hasn't proven to be any kind of deal breaker or insurmountable obstacle.
Any other thoughts on that? I am noticing the time, and I want to be respectful of the time that our panelists are sharing with us here. Maybe we can take one more question from our audience here if someone has one.
I will also just say that I'm happy to stay on a little bit longer too, even if folks need to drop off, if folks have additional questions about hosting.
Great. I would love to hear from any of our panelists who feel compelled to answer. What would you say to farms that are thinking of hosting an apprentice next year?
I'm going to have to log off, but so I'll go first. I think I would say, I think one vote towards doing it would be if you're very passionate about teaching somebody and having somebody, when somebody, show somebody a seed and look at the seed and they go, and that brings you so much joy, then it's a vote towards, I think, wanting to do it. And I think also one thing that has made a big impact is the level of just love for agriculture and some of the goals and like similarity in goals that I have. Finding a person who kind of is in that trajectory is, I think, really important to, if you do end up deciding, just finding somebody that does get that feeling of excitement, like, oh, we achieved this, or, and the way that they define success or joy or something beautiful is similar to maybe some of the trajectory that you see, I think is really important. So
Thanks,
yeah,
Alma. Appreciate you and your time.
Thank you, Alma. Okay, we have one more question in the chat. If housing isn't provided on the farm, who is responsible for the logistics of an apprentice's housing situation? Great question. Well, the person who ends up being responsible for it is the apprentice, but we try to help and we ask the host farmer to help too. So it's often really helpful if you have in your community networks of folks who you think might know of a housing situation that might work for somebody, to just put the word out, hey, we're looking for this thing for an apprentice that's going to be here from this date till this date. Do you know of anybody who might have an extra living situation that might work? So just helping put the word out there, and using your existing networks can be really helpful. We've also had farms who have like arranged something with a neighbor who has something and said, here's the living situation we're going to offer you. It's not directly with us, it's with a neighbor, but they work out a lease situation with the neighbor. Sorry, go ahead, Matt.
No, that's all right. Sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you. That, just to echo what you said, I mean, we worked out the exact same thing with our neighbor down the road where we also grow, and he was very generous in renting kind of more of a lease to own situation on an RV to our apprentice this year, and that worked out phenomenally because we don't have additional housing here, and we also, I would love to be able to put up something to house an apprentice, but we that isn't possible for us yet. So that worked out amazingly well, and we are super thankful to our neighbors and our community members. So yeah, definitely reach out.
Yeah, not all opportunities are going to be on Craigslist.
Yeah.
So it's more important to word of mouth, let your community know what you're looking for, and you'll more than likely be rewarded. Because
that was a huge barrier for us, in finding an apprentice was the housing piece. At least with Lisa, our apprentice, she was moving here. So and we're super rural, so housing is not, there's not a ton of housing here, and the housing that is here is a little more expensive, just because there's less of it. So, so yeah.
And also we have apprentices who apply from the local area. So sometimes you get somebody who's already living in your area, and we try to do our work, our homework and outreach work in those local areas, especially where we have host farms that are not offering housing, and specifically also in more rural places, right? So just trying to hit all the outreach outlets that we can find that make sense in those areas.
Folks, I'm going to have to log off soon as well because I have chicken tractors to shut and it is getting dark outside, but I'm so happy to see a number of names and faces that I recognize on this call. And I want to thank again our host farm panelists for taking some time out of their busy schedules to be here on this call tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thanks everyone. Echo that, Kate. Thank you, Kate, for putting this together. And I'm going to drop in the chat one more time the website where you can get information and learn more about this opportunity. And we are happy to talk to you, any of you, on the phone at any point. You can find our phone number on our website as well. So